If we understand how to construct a society that forces a character to evolve, to push, to challenge, to continually need to overcome, we're set up for success because our character is constantly in peril, constantly needing to challenge something. Across galaxies and imaginative realms, stories carry us beyond the ordinary. This is Reading Things and Writing Stuff, where we explore the craft of sci-fi and fantasy stories and uncover how legendary tales are built so you can forge your own. I'm Tim Fasciola, award-winning author of the Eventual Realm series, here to guide you through the art of storytelling. Welcome back to the show. You want to know what I love? World building that feels real. And the way in which I like to make it feel real and feel authentic is I actually use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if you're like, I remember that vaguely, middle school. Yeah, that one. So instead of using Maslow's hierarchy of needs for an individual, I like using it for a society. The reason being is when we're talking about writing and fantasy, sci-fi, trying to make a world feel real, feel fleshed out, we need cohesiveness through the world building, the characterization. The world and the plot need to be so, they need to really come together. If there's any gap, any lack of cohesiveness, well, then things start to break down. I like to think about it as the world building is quite literally like the waters. The characterization, the characters are the vessel by which we explore those waters. The path by which we take across those waters, that's the plot. And the theme is the land that we arrive at. So if we want that ocean to feel real, that we're going to be crossing together, we need to ensure that the needs of that world and the status quo it imposes upon the characters feels fleshed out. And the reason why Maslow's hierarchy of needs works for that is because there are stages. And it's not that any one world society is going to be like only focused on the one thing. It's just what is it mainly focused on? We're going to go and dive into examples, but first let's recap. What is Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So if you'll recall that middle school social studies book report you had to do, this is a breakdown of what you will drive an individual, but we're going to look at that from the standpoint of a social structure. So imagine a society that does not have what it needs to survive. So base level 1, physiological needs, are they met? Is there enough food? Is there enough water? If you don't have food or water, that's going to be your sole focus, is just finding those to sustain yourself. So think like zombie apocalypse, like boom, things hit the fan and you're trying to survive. The first thing is just finding means of survival. And then once you have those needs met, then it's okay, well, now we need shelter. And it goes up from there. So level 1, baseline, things are ugly. You're just trying to meet your physiological needs. That is what the leaders of this society, and usually at that point, it's like almost tribal in terms of the development of that society. Now, level 2 is shelter. This is where, the society is mostly focused on building walls, creating protections, making sure that the people have means of defending themselves, protecting themselves. Now, level 3, this is where it becomes more social. This is where the focus, and once again, doesn't mean that you can't have these things at earlier levels, but the focus becomes more a matter of, guilds and religions and groups of people that come together on like-minded things. And that creates a lot of good conflict when people disagree over which groups should receive an allocation of resources. Then we start getting into more of the higher ups. The next level kind of goes beyond just that small social dynamic. And this is more starting to look for, this is the economy, this is trade, this is more, if this is one society, now we're starting to interact with other societies beyond ours. So this is like the focal point becomes the economy, the trade, in the more foreign relations. And whatever that is, it's relative. So like we're talking about a a village in a desolate village in fantasy versus, a world to another world in sci-fi. Like it could be the same like thing. It's just depending on scale. But then, and that's 4, esteem. But 5 is self-actualization. So as a society, this is where the society is more focused on the arts, philosophy. This is like the age of decadence where your needs are provided for and you can start to, think about, well, what would make us just better? How do we like continue to evolve? Science and technology really flourish, arts really flourish. This is really where that becomes the main focal point. So if we understand that about a society, and you might be thinking like, what does this have to do with anything? But world building establishes the status quo that your protagonist, the vessel, is going to have to paddle against. So we want the world set up in such a way that your characters are always having to push against something. So if we create a world in which the character has no choice but to go directly forward, pushing forward, actively driving against, challenging that system, it sets up for a lot of conflict. And this is where we're going to start talking about examples in books. So the first one I have here is Pierce Brown's Red Rising. So the Book Talk Bro starter kit right here. So in Red Rising, it starts out in the mines, right? So we meet Darrow. He is in the mines of Mars, and he's mining helium-3, and he believes he is doing it to help provide for the terraforming of different planets, specifically like to make it livable for the rest of humanity. Yeah, that's what he believes. Now, the status quo that imposes, like within the mines of Mars, it is very small, very focused, very family oriented, very tribal in a way, because they have the different clans essentially that are competing for the laurel, and the laurel is what allows them to be able to feed their family. So let's look at that Maslow's hierarchy of needs again. What is the main focal point? So yes, there is like the fact that there's clans, that puts us at that 3 scale, that social focus point, right? But some of the people in this society, their main goal is achieving the laurel so they can feed their family, so that they can have the medications that they need to survive. So it's not a very highly evolved society within the mines. And that sets the tone for what is at stake in the pre-story. And we're going to get into that when we start talking about plotting structure, like, well, what is a pre-story? But the time we spend in the mines establishes the status quo for Darrow's world, Darrow's upbringing. And that shapes who he is. And that is the main reason why he's able to be successful when he does become a gold and infiltrate golden society. So if we understand how to construct a society that forces a character to evolve, to push, to challenge, to continually need to overcome, we're set up for success, because our character is constantly in peril, constantly needing to challenge something. So if we understand that, okay, this society within like the microcosm of gold society, this red mine in Mars, is like a 2, and some people are at a 3. Like some different clans have it better than others. Like if we're comparing like the gammas to the, like all the different tribes, all the different clans, who has the resources, who's more focused on like the social aspects, who's more focused on just like getting enough food and meds. Let's look at the rest of the story within Red Rising. Once Darrow makes it beyond the mines and kind of sees like, this has already been terraformed. They've been lying to us. And then realizes that for the rest of the solar system, the golds have been living this decadent life across literally the entirety of the core. So Mars is terraformed. Venus, Mercury, like people are living not in mines, not below ground, not in hovels, diving for helium-3 to be able to make this, this dream work. They're living, and the high colors decadently. And the low colors, even like the low reds, much better than anyone in the mines. So what is their status quo? Like, what is their scale in Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Probably closer to a 5 for the gold. Some of the others, maybe it's 4. They're trying to, like the society within the society. But if we just look at the hierarchy as a whole, yeah, it's very much in that 5. So that gives Darrow a lot to push against the whole way through. And then once we get to the Institute, things change again. Status quo changes again. What is the status? What is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs once they're in the Institute? It goes back to survival. It goes literally from the ground up because they're trying to teach these golds who are meant to lead society what it's like to lead. So they have to go through, on a micro scale, the evolution of what it's like to lead at different stages. All right, you're in House Mars. Great. You need to, like, they're given protection, but like you have to go out and do this. So they still need to find food. Some houses already start out that way. Others don't. Some houses have things like horses and weapons. Others don't. And they have to find a way to make do with what they have and progress to the next level and then start taking over and dominating. And that's where we get more into, the 3s, level 3, social, level 4. Like I talked about trade, but that can also be expansion and imperialism. And then like war making. And then level 5, that is the goal, getting to the point of we have led, we dominate, and now there is stability and control, and we can do whatever we want. One of the themes, and it's mentioned very early on by Nero Augustus, is what is the greatest enemy of gold? And it's decadence. It is their own decadence that could lead to their downfall. So if we understand, like, that's baked into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's baked into the world building, and it's established very early on. So it sets the tone of what Darrow has to work with, what he's up against, and how he can be successful. Now, let's jump into another example where Maslow's hierarchy of need really is shown in the world building, and it makes the story more believable. So another book, and I don't have it here, but The Will of the Many by James Islington. So this is one of my favorite books of, I can't remember if it came out 2023, 2024. It was one of my favorite books. I just did a reread before Strength of the Few comes out in a few months. This book was awesome because the world building is so well established. Everything is so cohesive. We have, like, and people are like, oh, or Red Rising, The Will of the Many, they're so similar. Yes, because they do a lot of things really well. Similar and yet very much in its own way. So yes, there is a school for the elite. Yes, there is a Roman kind of feel to it. But don't get lost. Like, if we're going to talk about structure and what makes storycraft and storytelling enter the meaning-making cycle of our readers, don't get held up on the ornaments. It's the structure. It's what lies beneath that's really going to ensure that story resonates with its audience. So in The Will of the Many, as it relates to the hierarchy that's established, like, we have 3 branches. We have governance, we have religion, and we have military. And these 3 different factions that run the hierarchy, that like run the Katenin lifestyle, if we understand, and if the reader understands what that's like, the imperialistic approach to Katen, that helps us, that establishes Visit's story. We know what he's up against. He is a war victim of colonial imperialism. And because of that, being a prince who's orphaned by that, this society that he is now in, at every level, like, depending on those who seed will, the octavi and the sexti, like, over all the lower levels of society relative to, the courtesans and the tertiuses, and like, they hold so much power, and they use that power on a pyramid, on a scale, and everyone is within those pyramids, and he wants to break that scale. So if we understand what he's up against, if we understand that the degree of decadence that is held by the elite, we can see the importance of the journey. Now, Vis's main goal is just to escape, to get out. to not ever have to cede will, which is interesting in and of itself. And for the beginning of the story, he's really like, if we look at him as an individual, he's really driven by like his safety. He needs to keep his identity hidden. But the way in which he does that is by developing himself, learning, constantly sneaking off, going to the library. So he's competing in the arena. Like he's constantly doing these things to find a way to purchase and pave the path for his escape, his freedom, while keeping his identity hidden. So if we can establish early on in the story what is at stake, what the status quo is, how that is enforced, and who is enforcing it, it gives our characters a lot to push against. And when we have factions against factions, and it really creates a nice power struggle that exists beyond the character. It makes the world feel lived in. So specifically, it's kind of like late emerging, and yet it's felt throughout. Like the explanation of what is going on isn't really explained right away. It's this slow drip feed. And I think that is so effective, especially in when you have like these big 500 plus page books. It does need to be drip fed. Naturally, like we writers, we just want to like lore dump really early on to make it canonical. We're going to learn better ways. That's not the case. We want this slow drip feed, this how and when is information presented. James Islington is a master at this. So the development of the rivalry that exists between governance, military, and religion, the control that they have, and the control that they don't, it paves the way for the conflicts behind the scenes and how those are then leveraged against our main character, Vis, and his story. So a great example, like if you want to understand how to establish your world in a cohesive way, look no further than The Will of the Many. Now, another one I want to talk about that is far less talked about is The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. This was a book that I absolutely loved. I didn't love the rest of the series, but that's not the point of what we're going to talk about here. Book 1 is a 5 out of 5 book, and if you want to read it, you can start there and finish there and never go forward. But anyway, the reason why I love this book is we have two societies that have constantly been at war that then are forced together, forced to, and given an opportunity to cohabitate. And it's the two leaders of these very different factions trying to prevent war from breaking out, battle from breaking out between their two people that have plenty of hatred for each other. So, story of the fight for peace, it's something I feel like our world could use more of. But it's we have like almost a samurai like kingdom feudal based structure, and then we have almost a Viking based tribal community. So Viking like tribe is quite literally they're trying to flee a mystical, magical, almost undefeatable, indestructible entity that is trying to gather all of the tribes of Tarkashi. And so this one group has since fled to escape the Golden, he's called. This like undying, super dangerous, like war mongerer. And so this clan leaves, they arrive on the shores of these samurai-like people who they have constantly pillaged over the years. And you can imagine an honor-based society, they're getting invaded and they're supposed to fight back, even though there's been a famine, there's been like an illness, there's been a plague, like they're struggling. They don't have the numbers to fight back. They're going to lose this battle if they fight. And they're coming in peace. They come waving a white flag, but their honor demands they fight. So if we don't understand that honor system, so if we have a society that started out at this 5 and 4 level on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but now they have kind of fallen, and now their focal point really needs to be on providing for their people because they do not have enough food and enough shelter. Is the honorable thing to fight to the death when you know you can't survive? Is that honorable for your people? So we have one character who actually goes against the leadership of his own people to forge a peace between the two, knowing that if we fight, we cannot win. And yes, our honor is intact, but thousands of people will die because of it. So if we understand that the systems in place and the status quos that have been established, it makes the character's decisions all the more meaningful and all the more poignant And so that is what we want to create as storytellers, that type of moment. And so that decision, that action, it sets up thematic tissue as well, because it's like, what does it mean to be honorable? What does honor look like in this season versus that season? And those types of questionings that make you like reflect, it's what we should want as storytellers. And this is something that I teach a lot of. There's like a ladder of like creative responsibility. And at its foundation, we have just like pure escapism. Some people read just to escape, and I get it. But like that's where it ends. They're like, all right, I've escaped. The second rung on that ladder is, yes, they've escaped, but they've also been entertained. They've also enjoyed the journey. And that's where a lot of stories stop, their entertainment. But there should be more than that we aim to create with our fiction. Because story is the way we are wired. That's how we understand the world we live in, and that is how we become active, participating components of society. So if it stops at entertainment, I feel like we're missing the boat. If we go a rung higher, this is where there's connection. Connection starts to take place. And, whether it's the reader connecting with a character or an idea, like that's at a minimum where we should be aiming. But then up another rung, this is where we actually get to like impart something. Like as creators, we should have something we want to say. We should have something that we want to resonate with our audience. And then another level up, this is where we actually can challenge worldviews. Like sci-fi and fantasy presents such a great, like a setting to even address this. Like if we said, hey, we're going to talk about politics today, like it would be like, whoa, like third rail, like nah, because people are so set in their ways. They don't want to be challenged in a way that is going to make them like reflect. There's such a defense mechanism that anytime a bias or a prejudice or a subset of your personality or identity is attached to. And so the worlds of fiction lower those inhibitions and allow us to actually like look beneath the surface of our identity linked things and just look at it from a principle standpoint. And this is what can really allow true growth and learning. And not saying that every story needs to challenge readers to in this capacity or teach them in this capacity. But what we do, if we understand that this creativity ladder exists, we can tell stories that start to matter more, that start to impact more, that are worth talking about. And that's something that I think we should at the very least understand. If you're just aiming to provide an escape, if you're just aiming to entertain, there's nothing wrong with that. There are readers for you, I promise. But I'm asking you, if you get this reference, great. If you don't, read this book, but live for more. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about, one more book reference, and that's this one. Now, this one's mine, shameless plug, fine, okay. So this is Ghost of Rheynia. So when I talk about society using Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what that looks like in a story. So this is a world where nothing truly dies, and therefore no one truly lives. There are these zombie-like things, there are these ghosts, like after you die, your soul doesn't go anywhere, it stays stuck. Now, whether that soul stays in a body that has literally been, like you feel every bit, you feel all of the pain that you've ever experienced, like it doesn't go away. You get a paper cut, that paper cut, you're gonna feel like you just got a paper cut forever. If you stub your toe, it's gonna feel like you just stubbed your toe for the rest of forever. And that drives you mad. So those are the hollowed. Then we have shades. Shades are your soul literally can't handle the pain that it's in and it departs from the body, but it loses all sentience. And you just wander aimlessly for the rest of forever. And then the third potential outcome of death is your soul departs your body because it can't handle the pain, but you retain sentience. But the pain of being outside of the body is like a soul without a body is just as painful. So now these souls look to inhabit living hosts to escape that pain. And these are called darklings. So we have a world in which nothing dies. Now, the other thing I should mention is there is this tyrant king called the Skeleton King, who wields a blood magic. Now, he has the order, the dominion of holy light that is meant to, purge these cull the hollowed, and get rid of the shades, and bring about an end to this, when all of the hollowed are gone and all of the shades are gone, then there can be unity, and then people can, get back to a normal way of life. That's the thought, or, quite literally, the goddess of justice is going to come down, deliver people their wings, and they're going to, almost like a rapture type thing, and they're going to go to a better place. And different branches, if you are within the dominion of the Skeleton King's order, food there, they have arcana tech that, can provide sunlight, because once again, nothing lives. Trees don't live. Wood is so valuable because it's trees don't grow. They just there's these dreadroot vines that wrap around everything and suck the life of. So when we have a world where everything is trying to kill you and yet you won't die, clinging to life matters so much. So, some of the themes are, what does it mean to survive? What does it mean to live? But some people within the order, they have their physiological needs met. They have shelter met. They're protected. They have walls that keep out the hollowed. They have, legionaries who man the walls to make sure that nothing gets inside. They have, if someone passes, they have people prepared for that. So they are safe, and therefore they can have more of that, social, they're at those levels 3 and 4. They can focus on, let's connect with, that city over there. We have, messengers that can go between, they can do that kind of stuff because their needs are met. Everyone within the order's dominion has that. For the, there was a civil war, when in the past, in the backstory, and people on the losing side of that, they don't have that outside of the dominion, physiological needs. They are constantly trying to provide for themselves. They're constantly just trying to survive, whether it is, so they're stuck at that 1 and 2. Do we have food? Do we have shelter? So for many of those people, the goal is just to be accepted into the order. Well, then there is 2 factions who are outside of the order's dominion. One wants to fight against the Skeleton King because he is a tyrant. He could get rid of all of the hollowed and the shades. He doesn't want to. He could do all of these things, but it serves him. It serves his power structure. So we have the Wraith who wants to get as many people as they can, and they want to flee this cursed island where things don't die and therefore things don't live. Then we have another faction. So that's the Wraith. We have another faction called the Underground. The Underground, quite literally, live underground. And they're the rebel faction that's trying to depose the Skeleton King. Now, what are they focused on? So if we look at the Wraith, it is a means of escape. They want to gather what they can so that they can start over somewhere else. So maybe they're at a 3 right now. There is a degree of interconnectivity. There's different, some of them might be at a 4, but their people are still living in that 1 and 2, and that's why they're trying to get out. Whereas people in the underground who are trying to fight back, war making is generally speaking, it's outside of your clan. So again, it's scale. But it's generally going to fall into that 4. You have enough of that social dynamic established, at least internally, where you have the numbers to make war. So when we have a society like that, we have these structures competing with each other, it establishes a tone. And this tone reinforces why the characters are the way they are. When our world building, it makes our characters who they are and forces them to adapt and change. Characters are built by our world. They're shaped by our world. They can't just be well, I have this character concept and I have this world concept and let's just throw them together. I mean, you could do that, but then you need to go through the cohesive aspect of layering and well, why? How would this impact this character? This character has this thought process, this thing. Why this prejudice, this bias? Why would they have that? What about the world made them this way? So just creating that interconnectivity, creating that cohesiveness. So I love the understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to make worlds feel real, to make worlds feel lived in. So whether that is a science fiction where you have some people that live in mines and some people that are living decadent lives, or whether it is a world in which nothing dies and nothing therefore truly lives and it's completely fantasy, the scale kind of doesn't matter. What does the level, what does the society focus on? If you understand that, it'll make for better world building, more believable storytelling, and provides your characters ample opportunities to challenge that status quo. If you've read any of the books I've mentioned so far, whether it's Red Rising, The Will of the Many, The Black Coast, or hey, Ghost of Rheynia, you can check that out. Leave me a comment. Talk to me. What did you like about these books? What worked for you? Did you notice these things in the stories that you were reading? If not, these are some great recs I'm giving you here. Dive in. Whether you're a reader or a writer, there's so much to love here. So thanks for joining me on this episode of Reading Things and Writing Stuff. I hope you enjoyed. Continue to read fiercely, continue to write boldly, and I'll see you in the next chapter.